Hello, I'm Greg, EG.IdrA Fields, and this is an EG replay review. Today I'll be looking at me versus Startail Bomber from IPL 4. We see me as the red Zerg in the bottom left and Bomber as the blue Terran in the top right. This was the opening match of our group, I believe, in IPL 4 in Las Vegas. It's just a really nice long macro game with a lot of different tactics displayed by both sides. And I believe in this game I opened with the standard Ling Infestor style, which is something that's gained a lot more popularity recently due to Stefano's success and just kind of the fact that Terrans are getting way too good against Mutalisks. Terrans are figuring out more and more that they get away with very quick 3 orbital commands and actually be completely safe with those builds. This gives them the minerals and resources to head up towards very fast 2-2 upgraded Marines along with Thors and just massive Marine production because they have such a big economy. And all of that is just way too efficient versus Mutalisks, which are great as harass units, but can't really do too much in a straight-up fight. So Zergs have more and more been moving away from Mutalisks into ground-based styles, Infestor-based styles with either Ling or Ling Roach support, and we'll see that from me here. Also, I believe I do a 4-queen opening this game, which is a great way to kind of transition into the mid-game. It gives you really good creep spread as you have 2 queens spreading creep tumors early on. You don't get gas immediately, so you have a much better mineral income, which sets you up really well for the mid-game, the macro game production as well. We see Bomber going for Reactor Hellion into an expansion. My drone scout saw everything, it saw the 1 gas, so I know that he will be expanding. So I know pretty much everything that's going on. And I don't believe he has scouted yet, but it's a pretty safe assumption that Zerg is going to be going for the macro game in the current state of the meta game. The Roach bailing all in that had pretty good success for a long time has been figured out by Terrans. It can still catch them off guard as a surprise. However, if they do scout it, they know exactly how to react and they can deal with it very efficiently. So it's become very risky for Zergs to do any kind of build like that. So Terrans now are reasonably safe in assuming that Zerg's going to go for a macro game, particularly me as I am very much so a macro player. And here we see the double gas going down at 44, at 4 queens. He runs through and tries to do some Hellion harass. However, with the 4 queens there, I'm able to take pretty minimal losses. It's very important to have 1 queen blocking that ramp. If the Hellions get up into your main, they can be very, very annoying, as queens just can't catch them unless they mess up. So very important to not only have those queens out here attacking, but also have the one on the ramp blocking. Put down that spine crawler as soon as possible for him to have 4 Hellions in your face. Here we can see that very fast, the early 3rd orbital going down, like I talked about, as well as the engineering wave for the upgrades. Just being very, very greedy, but it's almost not greedy as it's very difficult for Zerg to put any kind of pressure on this, regardless of whether they know about it or not. So it's kind of just standard play, but it gives Terran a great economic lead early on in the game, particularly with these Hellions getting map control. This is why a lot of Zergs have been favoring Roach-based openings, as they allow you to push those Hellions back and actually take an early 3rd. However, that does expend a lot more gas than Ling Infestor style does, and I feel it's a pretty big advantage to be able to invest all of your gas into Infestors and Hive tech. So here I have a very good creep spread, so as soon as I have speedlings out, I'm able to move out and start trying to surround his Hellions, and I'll be able to come out and take that 3rd base. Taking your 3rd base as early as possible is essentially your goal. Early game ZBT, that's all that really matters, is taking your 3rd base and being safe about it, not dying while taking it. Utmost importance. There he does end up losing his 4 Hellions. I lost a lot of Zerglings for it, so that's a pretty fair trade. However, I do get that 3rd base down, which is, as I said, of utmost importance. I also have Zerglings out on the map, so I have a little bit of map control now. I'll be able to see as he goes ahead and takes his 3rd base. I also send an Overseer immediately. This is because of the prevalence of Banshee builds right now. It's very important to know if the Banshees are coming or not, obviously, so a very quick scout is often beneficial. However, I see that he's just moving into the macro game, that he has a lot of barracks, really good production, has that quick 3rd orbital, just a good economy and very solid gameplay in general. Given that, I'm headed up towards Infestors. I'm getting my 2-2 upgrades immediately, get Burrow immediately, get Pathogen Glands as well, and just continuing to produce drones. Upon seeing that very fast 3rd orbital, I know that he's, as well as the tanks, I know that he's not going to be very aggressive. Off of a big economy, low tank count, fast timing pushes are just incredibly ineffective versus Zergling Infestor. So I know that I'm very safe now and I can continue to produce drones and get all my upgrades and tech going. I'll also be heading for Hive pretty quickly. If you get away with Zergling Infestor uninterrupted in the early game, you generally want to be going Hive before 13-minute mark. You can get it as early as 12. That can be a little bit risky. That's very, very fast. but you do want to be going Hive pretty much as quickly as you possibly can in this situation, just because you have that really good economy already, but also because the Terran has a really good economy. And as soon as that economy translates into production, into this 9 max production, along with his early tank count and the reactor medevacs and the double upgrades, you're really just going to absolutely need Hive in order to survive. And there it goes. And here we can see, this is a very important aspect of the strategy, is the counterattacks. Just counterattacks in general are incredibly important, but now, given that you are going double upgrades with your Zerglings, that you have such a big Zergling count, they become even more effective, as the Zerglings are obviously stronger and you can afford to expend more Zerglings in your attack. Here also a little bit of Infestor harass. Infestors always great harass units. Infested Terrans can just shut down a base. If you manage to get a couple of fungals on a mineral line, then obviously that would just kill all the SCVs that you managed to catch. So Infestors, pretty good harass units in this situation. Obviously much less expendable than Zerglings, so you want to be very careful about losing them. Here I come in, I see his attack moving out at the same time, and my Infestors see that there's absolutely no defense there. He doesn't even have anything to bunker. So I send in the Zerglings to do additional damage. He runs immediately. Also loading up this medevac, which is a little bit risky by him. Not a lot of defense there. Just this one empty bunker, and even sending out those tanks, he's actually being very, very risky at this point. Had I realized this and gone in and counterattacked his natural with my Zerglings immediately, I would have done a great amount of damage. And instead just forcing a lift here, killing a bunch of supply depots, also taking out these additional Zerglings coming in to do even more damage. Once I saw that weakness, I realized that I could do a lot of damage with those Zerglings, so I sent in even more to take advantage of that. And here we can see, very smart position by him with those tanks to absorb the Zergling damage and wall them off, while the Marines kill from behind. Also his push coming in here and at the same time killing my third base, as I've done a bunch of damage to him, leaving him actually ahead in supply. So that turned out very, very well for him, given how exposed and vulnerable he was. This little defense on his ramp really, really saved him there. Another aspect of this play that's very important is the static defense, preparation for drops. He sent in a drop there, however he lost it to the Spore Crawler. I was able to deal with that much more efficiently than I might have. And here, a big fungal on all the Marines, and the Zerglings will come in and take out the tanks. So that helps a lot, that drops the supply, stabilizes me, allows me to start droning up this base. Also, we have Hive Tech on the way for me. I have my Ultralisk Cavern down, I'm ready to transition into that, and as soon as I secure enough resources to actually begin Ultralisk production. And also we see 3-3 on the way from him at essentially the same time as me. That usually doesn't happen with this style. This style of Zerg is so heavily upgrade focused that usually Terran just can't keep up immediately. Obviously he can. He was playing very intelligently and very focused on a macro game right from the start. Here again I see a weakness, I go in for the attack. Lots of Infested Terrans. Infested Terrans are great in situations where your opponent has very low unit count, because fungal isn't as effective when there's not a lot of units all clumped up in order to fungal, obviously. Infesteds are just much more efficient in that situation. So there I got a bunch of SCV kills, I got a bunch of unit kills, and I got all my Infestors out. It's very important to continue to preserve your Infestors. They're the expensive portion of this style. You can make Zerglings all day long off a very limited economy, but you can't continue to keep reproducing the Infestors. Also, the longer they're alive, the more mana they build up, the more spells they can cast. So again, very, very important to keep your Infestors alive. And here another small Zergling attack. Once you have had a Zergling attack or a Zergling counterattack be effective, future ones become much more effective because you kind of destabilize your opponent. You kill off all the building walls that were here before. It's usually very difficult for the Terran to actually rebuild those. Their attention is elsewhere and they don't have a ton of resources to really invest into that. So it's very important to keep poking until they actually do reestablish those defenses. And here he has built up another very scary army. He doesn't have a lot of SCVs and he's still ahead of me in supply, so a very powerful army. However, the threat of those Zergling counterattacks I've been doing all game long scares him. It forces this portion of his army back. He's not completely committed to the attack, which is just buying me time. I have 3 more Ultras in production. My 3-3 upgrades are about to finish. That time that just the fear of the counterattack bought me is absolutely crucial. If this attack had moved out a minute earlier, I absolutely would not have been able to deal with it. Instead, I now have a much higher Ultralisk count. I'm going to have my 3-3 upgrades. I already have a bunch of Infestors as well as a decent standing army. And I have this base running. I have this base running. So I've gotten myself into very good shape. Just because he had to play so scared because those Zergling counters did a lot of damage earlier on in the game. Also, he's not really saturated, he's not taking a fourth base. If I can kill off this army, I'll be in absolutely great shape. And again, looking for the opportunity to be aggressive, to go in and get a counterattack, catching his army out of position. I realize that he has moved back in time, so instead I'm just going to go ahead and go in and engage. A huge group of Marines there, obviously perfect for fungal, and the Ultras going in, taking out the tank damage, getting my Infestors in range. Very good move by him there. With his siege tank, he's actually focusing down the Infestors, doing a ton of damage to them. And those tank shots are really what saved him the game there. Had I had an extra couple of Infestors, I had been able to cast another couple of fungals on those Marines, he would have lost his entire army, and that would have pretty much ended it. However, as is, I've established those two bases. I have a pretty good income. I have a ton of production coming out, another 38 Lings plus 4 Ultralists, all fully upgraded, as well as the Ultralists I saved from the previous battle and a couple Infestors left over. So the fact that he's now moving out to attack is still pretty good for me. I'm going to have a lot of units to try and hold that off. Also, my creep spread, I have most of the map pretty well covered in creep. He hasn't done a very good job of killing it off, and I've been spreading it all game long. So he is now attacking on creep versus Ling Infestor, which is very, very difficult to do. You just get surrounded so quickly by the Zerg units that it doesn't really work out too well. And we can see him coming in. Those 3-3 Marines fighting very efficiently along with those Marauders up here, but the Ultras are just too strong. They're able to clean up the attack without losing this hatchery or without losing a ton of drones. So a very, very good situation for me. And again, continuing to resupply, he's building pure bio units, whereas I'm resupplying off Hive tech. However, those 3-3 bio units can be very, very efficient. It's important to keep adding Zerglings and Infestors. If you get a pure Ultralist army, that's actually very, very inefficient versus Marine Marauder Medevac. So important to keep that Infestor production up whenever you have the gas to afford it. And we can see that he still does not have this fourth base. I have burrowed Zerglings everywhere. The drone here, the Overlord is spotting burrowed Zergling here. Very important to control your opponent's expansions to whatever extent possible. If you let Terran get away with a free orbital, even for a few minutes, the effective meals on the game can be absolutely drastic. So you can't afford to let him get away with that. And here, this is really the first drop harass he's done all game, but very, very effective. Once you switch to Hive tech, drop harass is just absolutely great. You can do a ton of damage with it. It's very hard for Zerg to be mobile enough to deal with it. And here we can see him attacking at the same time as a drop. Yeah, if I pull my army away in order to deal with this drop, then I leave to deal with that attack, then I leave this expansion vulnerable to that drop. So very nice move by him there, taking out that hatchery, and then at the same time, as soon as he unloads this, he'll be able to cut the mining there. Unfortunately for him, he did lose all these units here, so that is the silver lining for me. Also, catching the medevacs, very, very important to continue to kill medevacs at this point in the game. If they continue to build up, that's kind of a staple of Marine King's play. He's very careful about saving his medevacs and allowing his medevac count to accumulate all game, and then he ends up having 10 or 12 of them, and his bioforces just do not die once they have 3-3 upgrades plus that many medevacs hovering over them. And Infestors become almost useless, as the medevacs that actually completely out-heal them, and the army just becomes so incredibly resilient with the addition of those medevacs. So whenever you see a pack of medevacs like that, it's very important and very worthwhile to spend Infestor mana to fungal and kill them with infested Terrans. And here, finally moving out to try and take a fourth base. I know that if I allow him to take a fourth, I'll be in a lot of trouble. And I've built a big army. I've killed a lot of his units on the initial attacks, so I feel pretty comfortable. Cute little tactic there, using infested Terrans to actually trap his portion of his army. If you don't have fungal, or if you have a bunch of low mana Infestors, then that can be a nice little tactic to do on ramps, and it also looks really cute, which is always nice. And again, very good creep spread. I have vision of everything. I have good movement over everything. I can just see everything he's doing. I actually have a complete ring of vision around him. I can see any drop coming out. Very, very important, very, very powerful to have that ability as Zerg. And here we can see that he has finally taken this fourth base. However, in doing so, he lost a lot of his army, and he had to pull back from his aggression. So I've now established this base. I have this base running. He hasn't done anything to it. And I'm remaking this base, as well as continuing to produce a larger and larger army. Again, going in for the kill. I know, as I said, I have a bigger economy than him, and I actually have more efficient units as long as I fungal well. So it's good for me to keep attacking and keep cutting down his army, not allow him to get that really, really scary bio ball up. And there, with very good control, he's cutting down these Ultralists with more units joining in, going to do a ton of damage. However, these additional Ultralists able to force a lift there, pretty much stop his mining right now. He has almost no income, or actually does have quite a bit of income, but there. Almost no income for him relative to me. However, at the same time, he is dropping multiple places at once, doing a ton of damage. Really smart move by him to start dropping as I get aggressive. Obviously, my attention is going to be split elsewhere. My army is engaged over here. It's not going to be able to defend down here. So a really smart move by him to get back into the game, secure this base. However, I do manage to clear this up without losing the hatchery, which is very, very important for me. However, I did lose a bunch of drones. We can see that my bank is suffering pretty badly. I just don't have a ton of units or a ton of resources in order to produce more. However, at the same time, he is being a little bit over-aggressive. He has lost a big army there. We traded armies pretty well. However, Zergling Infestor, very, very efficient in small unit versus small unit fights. So this situation is still pretty good for me. And I have still the remaining Ultralists from that initial attack. And for every base that he kills with drop harass, I just established another one and continue to spread him out all over the map, knowing that I can be more mobile than he can. And here, another good surround by the Zerglings. Actually missed my fungals there, so a little bit of a mistake. However, more Infestors come in, allow me to clean up the army. And from here, very few units left for him, much better income for me, much better standing army, much better tech. So the game's starting to look pretty difficult for him at this point. However, a bunch of low health Ultralists actually do go ahead and die to those Marauders. Putting down a bunch of infested Terrans to take out SCVs forces him to waste mining time. And that he GG's as he has no income left and he knows there's no way he's going to be able to clear that out. This was an EG replay review. If you enjoyed this content, please go to evilgeniuses.net and check out a bunch of other similar videos that we have produced. And thank you for watching.